welcome to partake. If they come over, if they wake up from a nap, if they're excited, great. They don't each have to press. As long as somebody is pressing, I'm happy to follow through, even if it's just me pressing. Very good, Katie cat. Can we feed up in your station? That way we don't have to worry about your brother. Then for Katie, she can climb up with the ramp, but she often prefers a scoop. Yep, good girl. And she went ahead and put herself in position. Katie, scoop. Yes, Katie, scoop. So she's up eating now. So lots of talking to them, following through immediately, thinking about what you can take action with via the buttons. And we'll go in more depth with all of this as well. And apologies, it might be my internet making the video blurry. Apologies, y'all. Once we're back sharing, it should hopefully be better. All right. Hopefully that helped, having a little bit of a demo there. I know Katie's happy. All right, so for those of you wondering, how far can all of this go? It goes much further than just requesting kibble, wet food, pumpkin, the sorts of things that Katie was requesting there. We think this video really helps paint a picture of what's possible, and you'll probably recognize Alexis and Bunny.
The foundation for getting started with buttons is just a desire to connect.
Do you do outside?
I can't remember the exact order, but I think she pressed stranger mad, and I was like, what does that mean? And then ouch paw. And then she came over to me and she put her left paw in my hand, and I was like, okay. And I looked between her toes and she had a foxtail stuck between her toes.
This was the stranger in her paw. She's got a mat between her toes.
We were inspired to get started thanks to that video with Alexis and Bunny, and Jasper was able to request medication after she had an eye procedure with eyes and help combined, and in some conjunction of that multiple times. So it's really, really amazing what they can do, even with a limited vocabulary. And it's not all medical related. There's lots of fun examples too. One of my favorite early ones was with Scout, a Catahoula mix, who would repeatedly combine water and bone. Took us a little while to figure out what she wanted, but it was ice cubes. So she got an ice cube button. So thinking about what are they interested in talking about and following through on that, expanding their vocabulary based on their interests. And so Linda asked a great question. Don't worry, we'll dive into that, and I'll read out your question in more depth. We'll get to it, no worries at all. I just want you to know you are not alone with that concern. So how do we begin? How do we first start off? For those of you who are either waiting on your buttons or haven't unpacked them yet, our very first step is modeling, and you can always be doing this verbally. Talk to them all the time, narrate what you're doing, what they're doing, practice being specific with your language. For me, I kept a list on my fridge for about a week and just tried to highlight any time I said something that was consistent, and if it was easy to say yes to, it went on the short list for becoming a button. Since modeling is how we teach our learners what these concepts mean, early on, the more actionable and the easier it is for you to say yes to their press, the better. We want to capture their excitement, their enthusiasm around the board, and teach them this is an amazing tool that they now have available to them. So 3 simple steps once you have your button set up. First, press that button, something that you can immediately and frequently follow through on and say yes to. And then step 2 is follow through. Say yes to that press and show them the meaning of the word by making it happen. Step 3 is repeat. Go back to step 1, repeat, repeat, repeat. It's a lot of repetition, especially early on while we're helping them understand the buttons have a consistent outcome each and every time. And so I have a video for you with Kelly and her learner Delmer. And this is the first 24 hours that they had buttons down in their household. So you can get an idea of how much repetition they're doing. And know that Kelly's talking to them all throughout and following through. It would just be too long of a video to show all this. So this is just her pressing throughout.
Puzzle. Outside. 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 Puzzle. Outside. Pets. Puzzle. Outside. Outside. Pets. Puzzle. Puzzle. Yes.
Use no
Puzzle. More
accidental
puzzle?
press.
Puzzle. Puzzle. Outside. 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 Puzzle. Outside. Puzzle. Outside. Outside. Outside.
So again, it's a lot of repetition, especially early on, while we're helping them understand that the button has a consistent outcome each and every time. And use those accidental presses. They're great opportunities for your learner to realize that they can affect change, that they can make the buttons work for them and have things be affected as well. Added a link to their Instagram if you're curious, and Valerie, excellent question. We'll dive into that as well. Yeah, and notice at the bottom too, I've got a note. Basically, the speed at which they pick up buttons has no bearing on their long-term success. So if you've already been modeling for a little while, or maybe you're all gung-ho about starting off, but your learner's just not interested yet because they have other effective ways of communicating, that's okay. The speed at which they pick up buttons has no bearing on their long-term success. Some of our most successful learners took months before pressing independently. Milo the Aussie Doodle, Elsie, Mary Robinette Kowal's Calico Cat. Who else? There's another example that I usually give. And I know with us here tonight with Robin, some of her learners took much longer than you would have expected with how chatty they are now. It takes some time sometimes to realize that the buttons can work for them, that it's worth pressing, that it's worth learning a new communication skill and tool, right? And the older our learners are, the larger their vocabularies tend to be, which is great, but it might mean that they have well-established modes of communicating already, and it takes them a bit longer to recognize, oh, I can just use this button as a shortcut. So us being more likely to say yes to a button press, that can help them be gently incentivized. And if they know that, them whining by the back door, pawing, if it's urgent, if they need to go to the bathroom, just get them out. That's not the time to be teaching, to be modeling. Follow through with urgent needs. But if they're asking for something, or here's another example, my border collie loves to ask for play by throwing the toy at my feet repeatedly, hitting in a play bow, and scream barking at me and being very demanding in that way. I am much less inclined to say yes to a scream, demand, bark as she play bows in front of me than her going over and pressing a play button or a ball button or tug or whatever it is. I'm still listening to her body language. I'm still honoring all of the ways she's asking. I'm acknowledging every way that she's communicating to me. But if she's being rude, I'm much less inclined to say yes. And so buttons are a way for her to sometimes be a little bit more polite, a little bit less forceful in her requests. So thinking about saying yes and letting them realize that you're much more inclined to say yes if they do a button press. So that's where thinking about things like food buttons, that can be a really great way to motivate them, a really great way to help them understand with rapid modeling association that pressing this button equals an outcome that you want. So here's Kelly with a different learner. This time it's Nushka, who's also new to the buttons. And they're using a snack button. So Kelly's pressing snack, and then the food is immediately appearing for Nushka. Notice that she's throwing the food a little bit away so that Nushka's having to reorient to the button, reorient to Kelly. She's moving things around a little bit, keeping it dynamic. And she's pressing the food button with a piece of food as well, so that it's really helping drive home with smell and with the timing that the button press and hearing the snack sound equals the food appearing. So rapid modeling, rapid pairing, helping them understand that the button has a consistent outcome and that it's something that they want, something that they're motivated to use, ideally as well. And you can get a lot of repetition in because we ideally want to be setting ourselves up for success. The easier it is for us to say yes to their presses, the better. And the more we can say yes, the faster they tend to want to press But again, they're all different. They're all going to take different amounts of time. It doesn't mean that they're less intelligent or you're doing a bad job as a teacher. They're all individuals. So sometimes thinking about, choosing first buttons and words or tweaking what you have down if you've already been modeling for a while without them showing much interest in pressing. So set yourself up for success. Something that's easy to say yes to. 2 or 3 buttons, more than one, to help them realize the different buttons mean different things. And ideally, those starting buttons should be motivating and meaningful to your individual learner. If you have, multiple learners with really different interests, it might be worth starting them on their own boards or having a combined board and just having different interests on different sides, whatever you want to do. The more easy and convenient it is to model immediately and for you to say yes to, the better. And concrete or actionable. The easier it is to show them what it means to take action, the better as well, to build that strong foundation. When we think about the soundboard itself is an abstract tool that they're learning how to use. So that's why the more concrete, actionable, easy to understand buttons you begin with, the faster they get it, and then you can move on to more abstract and difficult concepts from there. Sherry asked, so with the snack button example, when does the dog associate the location of that button with the name of that button? It takes a lot of repetition, and that's why we want to have several buttons that we're working with. And you can pop them out of the hex tile, or if you're using the hex tile, it's totally up to you. You can pop them out of the hex tile, bring it with you, do that rapid pairing, and then move it back, or leave it in the hex tiles and practice from there. Let's see, and interesting. So there's another comment from Instagram too. My dog has no interest in the buttons since the very first time she heard my voice come from them. It really bothered her. She's insistent I learn her eye language, which is not always clear. Yeah, so sometimes it sounds like we do need to get them comfortable with the buttons, thinking about something incredibly motivating. So that's where food comes in. And some of the button literature out there, including that comes with the FluentPet kits. I know it came with my initial FluentPet kit, explicitly says avoid food, but that is outdated. What we found with the 4.5 years plus now of research, thousands of households and successful learners, is that they're going to find ways to talk about food regardless. So we might as well give them a button to be very direct and clear in their communication about it. What that button is up to you. And again, if you've got resource garters, if you've got a learner that's on a diet, if they're not food motivated, you don't have to start with food. If you are just too worried to start with food, also no pressure. You could save it as, a really high value option if they're not showing interest pressing on their own. You can, bring that out as kind of a Hail Mary option if you wanted. But it's so motivating for so many of them. And it actually, once they realize you're going to consistently say yes to a food press, it becomes a bit less valuable because it's no longer a limited resource. And when I started with my blind cat, Jasper, she had leukemia. That's unfortunately how she passed. But the vets at the time, wanted her to gain weight because her appetite had waned. She went from eating to the point of regurgitation all the time, being a feral kitten who was obsessed with food, to, not being as interested with her illness. So I was like, okay, if the buttons, starting with a food button will make her obsessed with it, that sounds great. Let's actually start with a food button for that reason. And the opposite happened. It wound up, once she was feeling better, she loved pressing that food button, but it became less of a limited resource. And she was able to leave food in her bowl for the first time ever in her life. She stopped eating to the point of regurgitation. It revolutionized her relationship because when she pressed it, I was home. It was, during early pandemic, I would say yes, and I'd follow through because there were no dietary concerns because it was just keep her happy and comfortable towards the end of her life. And then we wound up having another couple years together and she didn't abuse that food button. And my cat, Katie, now, she's very particular about her 5 or 6 meals a day, but they're small meals. She tells me when she wants them. She tells me if she wants wet food or kibble or pumpkin or all three, or if she wants a different wet food. She started to combine wet food and water to ask for her freeze-dried food with water in it. She made up that combination. That was not one that I had modeled for her. So this is what I mean by giving them what they're interested in talking about. Do I personally have a lot of interest in individual food buttons? No. I mean, is it helpful, especially when I have a pet sitter here, that Katie can tell them exactly what's missing from her meal? And she will. She will let you know if you forgot pumpkin or if she wants more pumpkin or more kibble, whatever it is. So giving her that autonomy, giving her what she's interested in and curious about has led her to making novel combinations with the buttons. And as much as you think they're going to become obsessive, think about if you knew that every single time you sat down at a slot machine, you were going to win the jackpot. And there's nobody else around. Nobody else is crowding out of the way. You've got your own slot machine that's just for you. Every time you pull that lever, you're going to win a jackpot. Eventually, you're looking around at your millions of dollars and you're like, I'm kind of hungry. I need to go to the bathroom. If you know you're going to come back, pull it and win the jackpot again, eventually it becomes a lot less valuable of a resource, right? So that's kind of what we want the food button to become for our learners. If it's safe, if it's reasonable, they're all individuals, of course, but have fun with it. So for us, we began with a general eat for the cats. I was adamant about not beginning with a food button for my dogs at the time because we were worried. And I began with ball and outside for Adora. It's up to you whether you start with a specific like ball. Ball is life for my border collie. So we began with that. But for the kittens, I began with a general play because they didn't have a favorite in particular. And now we're working on specifics. If you start specific, you can always get general. If you start general, you can always get more specific. So think about what you talk about most, what your learners want to talk about most, and go from there. So I began with ball and outside for Adora, and she was so over the top excited, so obsessed with those buttons that I actually added a food button, despite the advice at the time 4.5 years ago saying not to. I added one just to calm her down because I was like, she's way too excited with these activity buttons. So this is where think about what motivates your individual learner and what's meaningful to them and go from there. And so if your learner already has a doorbell, like bells at the door or something like that, or a doorbell on the door, leave those. That's an established mode of communication for them, right? And if you think about like an outside button, that's not going to be as motivating or meaningful to them because they already have a way of very effectively communicating what it is that they want. So think about what you can ideally reinforce 10 to 15 times a day, and that's maybe a bit tougher for them to ask for specifically with body language. So again, this is why there's general best practices, but it's going to come down to your individual learners and kind of knowing those nuances. So Senior Lab is very food motivated, but having trouble getting her motivated to care that much about non-food related buttons. Fair. And sometimes there is one that's the end all be all, but keep modeling the others, and think about, are they interested in pets, scritches, brush? A lot of cats in particular are interested in brush, for example. The specifics like that might be a bit more challenging than, they might be able to just rub up against your leg if they want pets or attention, but how do they tell you if they want to be brushed, if they're interested in that? So thinking about things that aren't as easy to communicate with body language, but even if it is something that they can communicate with body language, if it's motivating enough for them, if it's easy enough for you to say yes to, it might be worth adding a button for, just so that you can get those reps in and build the value for the soundboard, for the buttons, that sort of thing. And so we're modeling with it in location. They're learning the location of the soundboard. And we can think about them learning the location of the button as similar to us learning how to type on a keyboard. At first, you're going really slow. You're thinking about it. You're looking at each key and pushing it. But with time, practice, and patience, you can go much faster. Type without looking. You can pick up your entire laptop and move it wherever. And you know that your keys are going to be in the same place. That's how we want them to get to be with their soundboard, using their muscle memory to find the location. And they're probably using some amount of smell as well, and potentially other senses, touch, that just to locate where the buttons are. So that's why we don't want to be rearranging things too much. Anytime we make an adjustment to the board, modeling that change, showing them that it's different. And I like to give my learners the option to be around while I'm making those board changes too, so that they don't wake up from a nap or come in from outside and be like, whoa, everything is different. Change is inevitable, especially when we think about the soundboard as a lifelong skill. There's times when buttons are going to be removed or added or adjusted. You might move, and so the soundboard moves with you. You might go on vacation and bring the soundboard with you. But again, as long as you're not rearranging the individual button locations, they should be able to get it and adapt to those changes too. So that helps with thinking about that. So Valerie, I'm not sure if we went too much specifically with your cat, but just thinking about, are there times when you're getting meowed at and then led somewhere? Especially if it's something, or whined at if it's a dog, in someone else's case, and then led somewhere. Keep encouraging that. We're always, again, honoring that body language. We love a show me. The buttons are not a replacement for body language. But think about, how can we make this easier? How can we enhance their communication and shortcut it? If they've got to lead you up 2 flights of stairs, for example, to show you what it is they want, but you could just add a button for it that they can press and then, oh yeah, let me go get that for you. Great. That might be the thing that unlocks their desire to press, just the ease. So thinking about what's easy and convenient for you to get to for modeling as well, in terms of location. Usually no more than 2 buttons per hex tile to start off. So that's where thinking about, 3 buttons, 3 hex tiles, go. Even for my tiny kittens, I don't like to start with more than 2 buttons per hex tile, just so that they're not getting overwhelmed or frustrated by that. Hi, kitty cat. Yeah, the more centrally located, the easier it is for you to model, for your learner to get to, the better. And a lot of our learners like to watch us while they're pressing as well. All right, so to an earlier question here, I don't know, what do I do when they just want to go outside all the time, or press a button repeatedly, or just repeat things? That might mean that you're ready for some abstract concepts. So once they're pressing independently, fantastic. But they might be pressing to the point where you're like, I can't say yes to all of these anymore. So thinking about other options to put on the board that you can say yes to, because again, we don't want it to be frustrating. We want this to be a fun, engaging way of communicating with us. So if they're asking for a lot of food, maybe thinking about putting a puzzle button on the board, some way for them to slowly work through and paw or nose for food that's hidden in a puzzle toy for them, for example, or a frozen Kong, something like that, that buys you some time so that they're not just pressing for you to have to follow through. So think about more things that you can easily say yes to. And then you might also want to consider some abstract concepts. So abstract concepts, because they're not as concrete or actionable, they can be challenging for our learners. So that's why we want to establish a strong foundational understanding of the board first, get those independent presses first, and then start thinking about things like more and all done, or yes and no, now and later, some kind of pair like this. And we talk about pairs because then you can model them in opposition or in contrast to one another. When you think about, yes, more eat now, and you're adding food to their bowl, or narrating it as you're adding seconds for yourself, because again, narrate what you're doing. That's a great way to help teach them. So you can take action with the yes, with the now, with the more. In contrast, outside all done, no, we can go later, and then nothing happens. That's a lot more challenging for them to understand, right? We're not taking action. There's not anything concrete in that case. One exception with the all done that I find somewhat easy to narrate, at least with my cats, if you give them something they don't want, or when they get to the end of their food and they go to cover it, narrate that as all done. That's a great way to capture it, and it's a little bit more concrete. You can take it away in that moment. I'm sure there's some other examples too, But overall, they ask for something, you tell them all done, nothing happens. And that can be frustrating too. We don't want to demotivate them, shut down their board use and curiosity, right? So that's why the more things you can say yes to, and making sure that if you're putting something session ending like an all done, that could be frustrating because it's boring, nothing's happening. There's also a more that you can counter it with, or that they can counter it with. And so other abstract concepts can include emotions, and these things you can be narrating and practicing well before you're ready to put them down on the board. So think about a positive emotion button like happy that you can be narrating in contrast to a negative like mad, sad, or frustrated. Time, again, now or later, but it could be now, soon, and later. You can do today, tomorrow. Other emotions, safe, concerned, friend, and stranger when we get to names and identity. Even me versus you, different household member names. Think about what you want to be called. Mom, dad, by your first name. What are they going to be hearing you called or narrated as by other people? That might help you shortcut what you decide you want to be called. So thinking about all of this, and we do have mentorship calls, which are free, ongoing discussions to help deep dive into these things. Some of our great guides, including Robin has been a host in the past as well. They're just a great way to continue your education. So there are abstract concept ones. Robin says, I also spoke with someone who was leaping up every time outside was pressed, but was not as enthusiastic when other buttons were pressed because she had a small dog, would play from the floor and do pets from the floor, and turned out her dog was using outside to summon her over and get her excited and to get up and get a response from her. That's fascinating. I've even seen pets used as like human, use your grabby hands to grab something else for me. Because pets, we're reaching for them. So I've seen that used to narrate or to request us to reach towards other things. So paying attention to how they're using the buttons. Sometimes pressing a button and expecting another outcome is not them not understanding. It's them asking for something else, using their body language, where they're looking to direct you elsewhere. And that can be a sign that they're ready for more buttons, actually. So thank you. Neo has a very consistent routine. His first button was play last week, probably because that request was outside of his usual routine. Interesting. If everything is going according to plan, he doesn't feel the need to use the buttons. That's a great observation, and there's nothing wrong with that. My border collie, when she's tired and happy, like when we start our day off with a nice long creek walk, she's coming in, she's napping, and I'm getting very few presses from her throughout the day. If I get distracted, if I have to go straight to work and I don't give her that nice long walk, I'm getting outside requests, play requests all throughout the day. So sometimes, yeah, a quiet dog just means that they're content. I know Alexis has talked about that Bunny, some of her presses have calmed down. She presses less when she's out of the cabin, when she's tired, when there's less stress going on in her life. This is a bit more of a serious topic, but sometimes the lack of button press can be just as much information as pressing. Part of how I knew that it was time to say goodbye to my cat Jasper was she stopped pressing her buttons for 24 hours. She went from requesting, similar to Katie, 5 or 6 small meals a day to suddenly nothing in 24 hours. There were plenty of other signs. I was in contact with her vets doing multiple end of life quality scales and all. But what really honestly told me most of all was that she stopped using her buttons. She didn't give me a profound goodbye or love you or anything like that. And I wasn't expecting one. But that to me is just so important to note that, and I'm not saying it anything extreme like that. Obviously, I knew that she was towards the end of her life. They'll take button breaks without it meaning anything serious. But if they're a regular user and suddenly they stop, it might be worth looking into, either health-wise or just environmental-wise. Is something different going on outside? So it's not always just the button use, but the lack of use that can be a great amount of information. Thank you, son. Okay, so we have the wonderful question. I don't think my girl understands that she can press the buttons. So far, it's something I do. That is a very common observation as well. Or a common thing. Not everybody observes it though, so great observation on your part. That's where target training can come in. If you're modeling consistently and you've chosen motivating buttons, often they will start pressing or get curious about it or have some accidental presses, but not always. Target training is what can help others connect the dots, build their confidence and a sense of agency around pressing. And for those who are already using the buttons, target training can help you with precision. It can help them with going through growth spurts, working on that eye-paw or eye-nose coordination, depending on how they naturally prefer to press. And let them develop their style. Even though we can use target training to improve their style of pressing, let them figure out how they want to press. My one-eyed guy, Bernie. Hi, Katie. Mom's right here. Mom work. Yeah. My one-eyed guy, he's a shoulder presser. He flaps on the board. He's incredibly accurate. He's not frustrated. I can understand him. I think that's great. Katie's primarily a paw presser. My border collie, primarily paw presser as well, but she'll use her nose and her entire body to press. So let them develop their style. And we've got a few different resources here. And they're linked in the chat as well. Thank you so much, Irma. I want to just show you a little bit here. Trying to see if my internet will improve if I move slightly, but sadly no. Apologies if I'm blurry for you guys. Pulling the button out of the hex style to work on target training is incredibly helpful. Thinking about something that you can rapidly model. Once they're interested and want something, once they're interested in pressing, take advantage of that. So you can take something like a play button, pop it out of the hex tile, and the first one linked, the paw targeting tutorial, that's with Alexis and Bunny. If your learner already knows hi Katie, how to do a high five, just put it in the palm of your hand, cue them to give you a high five, follow through on the button press afterwards. So in this case, play, so engage with them in a toy. If it's eat, snack, whatever, give them food, whatever it is that the button says. If they know how to do a nose touch, put it in the palm of your hand, cue them to do a nose touch, follow through. Same thing with shake or paw, and then follow through. Obviously, though, this is out of the hex tile. Moving it back down in changes the picture, and not all of them are able to recognize that it's the same cue. So just ease them into it, go slow, but there's no harm in popping the button out as long as you know you just need to practice modeling it in position as well. Katie really wants pumpkin, huh? Katie, want more pumpkin? Yeah, more pumpkin? More pumpkin now, yes. So again, notice how I'm narrating. She is a big enough fan of pumpkin that I literally buy the like large can size. Hi. And I just let her eat straight out of the canister sometimes. You want a scoop for pumpkin? You are so silly. Pumpkin? Yeah, scoop for pumpkin. There we go. Good girl. So whatever it is that motivates them, I would have never in a million years guessed that pumpkin would be this motivating to my cat. She loves it, clearly. So let them talk about what it is that they're interested in. Hi, Delmer. So in addition to pulling it out of the hex tile and practicing, if you see your learner wants to activate it, if they're staring it down, tapping the sides of the button, nosing it, anything like that, when in doubt, help them out. I don't want them frustrated. I don't want them giving up and walking away, feeling demotivated by the board. I want them to be excited, to want to engage. So if they're trying, when in doubt, help them out. Press the button, not their body, because then there's no muscle memory involved if we're doing the pushing for them. But if they're tapping, nosing, sorry, buddy. If they're tapping or nosing, just go ahead and push the button for them and then follow through. That way they're getting to feel it move under their paw or nose. They're getting that tactile stimulation. They're getting to hear it. And then you're following through. For my blind cat, she went to knock her food bowl off of the counter to tell me that it was empty. And I took a button out of the hex tile, put it underneath of her paw, right where she was going to hit. I had the advantage of her not seeing that she was about to hit it. She did that twice, I was able to capture it. And she was like, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to just hit a button instead of clearing the entire counter to tell you that I'm hungry. And she did it, until the day before she died, once she knew how to press after that point. So getting creative about your capturing like that as well. Let's see. Hi, Katie. See. Interesting. We have another question. My cat loves pressing buttons, but doesn't differentiate which one he really wants. And I try to follow through with each of his presses, but he's not learning which button he means. Even when I bring the toy he pressed, he goes and presses the button again and looks disappointed when I bring it. Interesting. So this one is a little bit more challenging. Keep trying to follow through at first with whatever is actually being pressed. As soon as he looks disappointed, though, just be like, oh, oops, and press that, the one that he wants, get the other one, do the correction. Keep correcting, keep following through, though, on that initial press. It might be worth spreading them out a little bit more. It might be worth trying to differentiate between the buttons a little bit differently. Maybe adding some natural scent, for example. The mom button, for example, lives in my pocket for a day before going on the board. The play button has been, left in the toy bin before it gets put down. I think about scent a lot because of my visually impaired learners, but I also have furniture protectors that I put down as texture on the buttons that I think have become scent soakers as well. So maybe thinking about some differentiation to help with that frustration, but keep following through on the initial press. We want to give them what they're pressing, but then as soon as you see that frustration, make a big deal of it. Oh, oops, is this what you want? Keep modeling, keep following through. It's going to take some time, and it might be worth adding an additional button. So believe it or not, we don't want to overwhelm them, but adding another one. If you only have 3, if you have more than that, I wouldn't add any more yet. But just adding another and seeing, especially if they're wanting something else, seeing if that helps solve the problem a little bit too. Excellent questions, y'all. All right, let me share some additional resources and then we'll dive into more questions that you all have. I know a couple more came through. So one of the best resources is community.fluent.pet, which is where a lot of you all are watching this right now. In the FluentPet community, in the welcome area, we've got start button teaching. If you're the type of person who wants step-by-step, in-depth detail of how to get started, this is for you. We also have FAQs. If you've got a question in the middle of the night, you're frustrated, you can always ask. We've got folks around the world who are usually on and loving to talk about buttons, myself included. But we also have 41 different FAQs under Button Bootcamp events. This is where you see the upcoming boot camps. You're always welcome to attend again. We would love to have you. If you've got a household member that you think would benefit, send them our way. We'd love to have them as well. And when you switch at the top here from upcoming to past, that's where you can find recordings. And this one is showing, though it's not quite done recording yet because I've got more questions of y'all's to answer. But yeah, you can always sign up for an additional boot camp here. And then we also have our mentorship calls. Our next one is coming up on Friday with Janine, who is one of our great guides. We've got multiple kind of in-depth topics here, cat-specific, modeling-specific, target training, picking first words, spamming. For those of you who have a learner who's pressing more than you can say yes to, yes, we'd love to have you just RSVP. And then under resources, this is where you can find a link to Learning Center, those paw targeting tutorials that were shared in the chat by Irma. Here's a soundboard planning tool as well. If you're the type that likes to have an idea of where things are going, use that tool. Just let your learner be the guide and be ready to make adjustments if need be. discussion, you can usually find up-to-date sales here, and then other info shared by guides and other bootcamp instructors. So fun stuff there. Chat. If you have questions, updates, wins, struggles, whatever it is, we'd love to have you update in the chat as well. One last thing I want to show, this whole discussion portion, tons of great in-depth info, but show off your soundboard. If you're looking for inspiration, there are as many different soundboard options as there are households out there. I love Tara's option here with the plexiglass to protect the wall, but it's also a wall mount with it being kind of angled. So it's a little bit easier for the learner to press, easy to clean with that plexiglass behind. Here's the soundboard planning tool that I mentioned in action with Sasha's board here. And then I want to show you Sasha's board in person, where it is right now. So the corner board can be a really great space-saving option, but notice that Sasha has still left enough room for her dogs to get behind into the corner so that they can turn around and face her while they're pressing. So many of them like to watch us and wait for our responses. So thinking about layout in that way as well. And there's kind of that classic cockpit style. For some that like to nap on the board, this is a senior cat's board. And she has cancer, so comfort is key. She's got her nice walkway. She's got her napping zones. Them napping on or near the board is a really great sign that they see it as a valuable place to be. Some of you might already be observing that early progress. But for Ducat, this way she can wake up, stretch, and make her requests, basically. So comfort is completely built into her board there. I've got a yoga mat underneath of our islands for that reason. Different wall mount options. So yeah, feel free to check around on here. And then there we go. We also have the Let's Get Them Pressing course. The next one starts very soon. There's a few slots left. It's a 4-week cohort-based class that's taught by Diane of Neurodog Training and guest instructed with Alexis with Bunny as well. There is 25% off if you're interested. Really great live coaching in addition to asynchronous materials. There's a lot of the topics that are covered, and I contributed to the cat information as well. And if anybody is realizing that you need more buttons or hex tiles or anything like that, there is 15% off, good for the next 24 hours for everything at fluent.pet. Irma just added that to the chat as well. Thank you, Irma. And then if you have any feedback for us, we're always looking to improve. We've got our feedback link right there. We'd love to hear from you. All right, thank you guys. So let me, oh, hi. Hi, Bernie. Bernie just woke up from his nap. I'm gonna say, let me turn on, let me move a little closer and turn on a light and see if that gets my screen a bit blurry, less blurry here for us. Hi. Hi, yeah. Mom, Adora, and Ash, and friend. Hi. 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 Hi, Bernie. Adora's upstairs. Yeah. So this is a bit of a less precise button flop on his part, but he's looking for attention. He is effectively getting attention with the mom button, and he probably is asking for where everyone is after waking up from his nap. Huh, I know. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Martha, I'm thrilled for you and Beanie. You've got this. I want to see, were there additional questions that came through here? Oh my gosh, Valerie, that's fascinating. Another cat who loves pumpkin. Yeah, so think about creative options like that. It doesn't have to be anything that's valuable or makes sense to anybody else. Adora's upstairs, yeah. Adora's upstairs. Oh, and so we had the question from Insta, from Layla in the World. What are some of the best ways to model happy? Since it's the closest button to the door, my dog often presses it when she simply wants attention. Yeah, so with that in mind, it might be worth adding a button specifically for attention in that spot or next to it. A hi, hello, yoo-hoo, even a mom button, as you heard, is a great way to get attention or to get your attention. So I would think about behavior as information and make sure that you have a button to fulfill the need that's being requested. Same thing for anybody who has a cat who's scratching at the board or a dog who's chewing at the hex tile or the buttons. Behavior is information. Add a chew button, add a scratch button. And then instead of interrupting, feeling like you're telling them no at the board, you're pressing a button. You're giving them an acceptable outlet that you're able to direct them to. So give them an outlet for attention. And then with happy, think about modeling it in opposition to mad, sad, frustrated, whatever that is. And whenever you're feeling those emotions, narrating it, modeling how you feel, but also thinking about when you can model it in your learner. When I first come home and I see the really excited, full body wag from the dog, the rattlesnake tail from the cat, I'm labeling that as high, happy. If they do an excited meow as I'm prepping their food, or an excited whine or something like that, narrating happy then while they're eating, they're doing that happy circular tail wag. So really noticing the body language, labeling it, and going from there. Hopefully that helps for that happy button. Old is too old? Another great question. In theory, the older they get, the tougher it is for them to make new connections. I mean, for all of us, our brains just aren't as efficient at processing information at that point. But we've had 16-year-old dogs and cats, multiple seniors, multiple teens, all take to the buttons. I think if there's cognitive decline, that makes it a lot more challenging. I know for one of my senior dogs, by the time I started buttons 4.5 years ago, she just wasn't quite as interested. We started it, but it just wasn't going to be her thing, and that's okay. But so many of them have really taken to it much later than you would have expected. And that's where the light up buttons can be really helpful too, if there is any kind of hearing loss or anything like that. Thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate you all being here tonight, all of your fantastic questions. You're always welcome to come back to another boot camp. Would love to see you at a future mentorship call as well.